welcome to the value stream mapping section of the stability series. Now in this section we'll define what a value stream is, we'll take you through the basics of how to value stream map, we'll define the types of value stream maps that there are, as well as developing an implementation plan. But before we get started, here's a small intro into the subject. This is my grandma. She's always been a great influence in my life. She was a woman of few words, but when she did speak, there always seemed to be a hidden lesson carefully weaved in that I'd find later in life. While my parents were working, she stayed at home and raised me until I got old enough to go to school. I recall her often passing the time working on big jigsaw puzzles. Naturally, I wanted to help. I began picking up random pieces and attempted to jam them together. None were fitting, and eventually I grew frustrated, then bored. Never one to interrupt, she continued working on her portion of the puzzle. I told her that I gave up and I didn't want to help anymore. She grinned and told me I wasn't going about it the right way. She then pointed to the picture on the box and told me she spends more time focusing on the outcome of the puzzle rather than the individual pieces. I didn't notice it before, but it dawned on me then that she'd often look back and forth between the image on the box and the pieces she had. Even at that young age, I realized that focusing on pieces without having a direction or an ultimate outcome in mind was silly. As I grew up, she used this lesson as a bridge to encourage me to clearly visualize goals first, before focusing on the pieces to get me there. It seems today that many organizations are fortunate to have amazing pieces in the form of a brilliant executive leadership, a talented, hard-working workforce, and an excellent supply and distribution network. Everyone is so focused on optimizing their piece of the puzzle that they rarely look up to see the ultimate image that they're working to build. To compound this, many organizations aimlessly apply individual lean tools with no ultimate picture that they're building toward. Obviously, an ultimate picture doesn't come with the keys to the executive office. The answer is, you as an organization not only have the luxury of creating this image, but the responsibility to do so. This ultimate image is expressed in the form of a value stream map, or particularly an ideal state map. Unfortunately, I've noticed many companies become enamored with the pieces of lean, but never take the time to create a vision they are building toward. After a few years of amazing efforts in 5S, SMED, and A3s lead them nowhere, lean just becomes another canned improvement exercise that didn't work. So here's a very generic definition of what a value stream is. It's all the steps needed to take a product or service all the way from beginning, which is the supplier, to the end, which is the customer. So if you're like most companies, your value streams have not yet been identified. Like this diagram shows, you have a loose idea of the products that flow through your organization, but the information lacks structure and organization. This is the same diagram, except we've clearly labeled each unique value stream. This simple diagram tells me a lot more than the one previously shown. First, I can clearly see that there are 4 unique product types that flow through the organization. Second, I can tell that the red value stream, or value stream C, takes the longest amount of time to go from supplier to customer. So let's focus on value stream C for a moment. Remember, one of the primary goals of lean is to reduce the time between order and cash. These two lines are literally the same illustration. Remember, along any value stream there are value-added and non-value-added steps. Removing non-value-added steps is our way to compress the value stream and reduce the order-to-cash lead time. In other words, compressing the value stream perfectly supports our goal of getting paid faster. So if you're implementing lean properly, you know that value stream mapping is essential. But there's a lot of hidden benefits that you may not know about. First of all is it creates a common language. So if you're in a hospital setting or in a factory setting, as long as you understand the value stream mapping symbols and the concepts, you can read any value stream map in the world and understand the improvements that that group is trying to make. The second thing is it creates a focus for your continuous improvement effort through an implementation plan that you drive out of your current state value stream map. The next thing is it defines flow. If you're forced to think about how products flow rather than optimizing silos, then that's the benefit you see from defining flow with your value stream map. The last thing is it's qualitative and quantitative. You can look at a map and from a qualitative perspective, just from the symbols that you're using, you can see that things are improving. And the quantitative aspect is perhaps more important. You can see the data from the data boxes and see where improvements need to be made. One of the first things you have to do is identify your value stream. Now, in any organization, products follow exact same or at least similar paths from beginning to end. Once you do an analysis on all your product, you'll see patterns start to emerge. Those are product families, and each product family has its own distinct value stream. So here's a simple way to identify the product families that flow through your organization. We'll be using skis in this example. You can see there are 4 types of skis that are made at the Simplex Ski Company: blue, red, green, and yellow. Each of these types go through various operations that include coating, tracing, cutting, painting, stenciling, and binding. The X represents each of the operations that the individual skis go through. Again, it's obvious that we make 4 unique types of skis here, but how many unique product families do we really have? At this point, we can sort the X's in the matrix and the product families emerge. Yellow appears to be a unique product family. Blue and green make up the same product family because they go through like, or in this case, identical operations. Red looks like it makes up its own unique product family. So, we make 4 unique types of skis, but there are only 3 unique product families. I've seen organizations insist that lean won't work because of the particular niche market they serve and the fact that they serve unique customers. At first glance, the number of products they offer appears to be very daunting. But a simple analysis like the one you've seen here can quickly group hundreds of products into just a handful of well-organized and manageable product families. Once value streams have been identified, I've seen many companies make another common mistake. They decide to peanut butter spread their lean efforts across all value streams. In other words, they decide they're going to 5S the entire shop, then they're going to use some Kanban cards, then TPM all machines, and so on across all value streams. This approach totally defeats the purpose of identifying your value streams because you could have just as easily taken this approach without spending the time to identify your product families and value streams. If you've already decided this will be your approach, regardless of your efforts in identifying product families, do not bother going any further with this exercise. Another common mistake is to stay with the peanut butter spread strategy but focus only on manufacturing instead of looking at the entire value stream. In most cases, manufacturing makes up less than 25% of the total lead time in a product. When I see Kaizen efforts solely around manufacturing, it tells me that the company lacks a total value stream perspective. Notice that if you peanut butter spread your lean efforts, you'll see minimum gains across all value streams. In fact, you may see no noticeable improvements in order to cash or quality of your products. This approach is a recipe for failure. So before you begin lean implementation, you're going to need to pick one value stream that you're going to apply all your lean thinking to. This is called a model line. This is going to serve as a model for the rest of your value streams. Now, the reason we do it this way is because it creates focus. If you apply lean thinking to all of your value streams, then the likelihood of success is pretty slim. It also limits the scope. If you can scope down to one value stream and compress that order to cash cycle, you can standardize that and then use that as a model for the rest of your value streams. So in this case, we're picking the red value stream as our model line. This means that we will focus all of our lean thinking on this line until we are satisfied we can sustain the improvements and use it as a model for the other product families. Keep in mind that it will be very tempting to begin working on other lines simultaneously. This is especially true with a large amount of early success on the model line. Maintain a disciplined approach and remind leadership that scope creep will dilute the efforts and eventually lead you to the incorrect peanut butter spread approach. Now, as a side note, make sure you pick a simple line for your first pass at this. You should go through great lengths to pick a line with a high likelihood of success. In this example, we chose the longest line just for illustration purposes. I recommend you not pick the most complex product family for your model line. So what's a value stream map? It's actually a pictorial snapshot of your shop floor. It gives material and information flow data, and it goes from start to finish, so supplier to customer. Now there are 3 value stream map types that you need to be familiar with. They're the current state, the future state, and the ideal state map. So a current state map is a snapshot of what's going on today. It provides a baseline of how you're performing right now, and oftentimes you'll see Kaizen bursts that show which direction the company's trying to move as far as improvement goes. These Kaizen bursts are transferred into an implementation plan, and that implementation plan is used to drive your improvement for the next 90 days. So why 90 days? Why not 30 or 60? Well, there's nothing magical about 90 days. I've just found through experience that a 90-day focused effort to take your current state to your future state works best. Now, I highly recommend that you check the status of your progress frequently. But 90 days is about as long as a team can keep intense focus to move to a future state. So this is a sample implementation plan driven from the Kaizen burst on a current state map. First and foremost, the goals in the plan should be created by the team. Everyone must agree that if the goals are achieved, the team will achieve the future state. The team should also agree that the goals are attainable. Now, it's better to err more on the side of being too aggressive. You'd be surprised as to how pressure can help teams achieve goals that they thought were unattainable. I've seen various formats for this 90-day plan. I always like using some sort of Gantt chart with specific targets and review dates. This lets everyone know the timing and the outcome expected at each stage of the 90 days. Perhaps the most important map is the ideal state map. This map tells me what your organization wants to be when it grows up. It also shows me the vision that's been set for your organization. It's the ultimate goal, and I encourage you to be aggressive. Envision a system with zero waste in it. This is going to serve as a guide for all future state maps. Creating an ideal state map can be very interesting. If you're working with a group or an individual that's a visionary, the exercise can stimulate thinking and create a direction that didn't exist before. If you're facilitating this event, it's important that you not impose your vision on the team. The vision has to belong to them. Questions like, what would this system look like without waste? Or, ideally, how do you envision the system running? May get the ball rolling. I've seen many cases where ideal state maps were much too conservative. It was only a matter of a few months before the ideal state was reached. Now, this was a positive step toward getting the team to build a real ideal state map next time. But remember, the ideal state is your vision of perfection. In theory, you shouldn't be able to reach it. It's meant to serve as a guiding light for your organization, so don't be afraid to share your vision. So your future state map was your 90-day goal. Now, ideally, if you drove through all your implementation actions, that future state is now your current state. You follow the same pattern, you envision another future state map, you go and create the Kaizen bursts that are going to get you there, and create an implementation plan. This new future state map should be 90 days closer to your ideal state map. Now, remember, in the perfect world, this loop works just right, and in exactly 90 days, your future state becomes your current state. Obviously, it doesn't always work that way. When I'm working with organizations, I like to see past drafts of future state maps. If I notice that there aren't multiple drafts, this means that the team is hitting their future state easily within the 90-day period. The scientific term for this is called sandbagging. I like to see multiple drafts that show me where the team fell short. This is because I like seeing teams being pushed to the limit and maximizing their 90 days. So I'm going to walk you through constructing a very basic value stream map. Now, there are many different approaches, and I encourage you to explore the different sequences to find the way that works best for you and your organization. One thing I do encourage you to do is draw these out in pencil. This way you can draw freely, knowing you can make mistakes and fix them later. Now personally, I like to start by creating symbols for the customer, then the supplier. This helps me bound the process so I know where it starts and where it ends. The reason I start by bounding the process is to clearly spell out the start and end point of the process I'm interested in. I found that without clearly defined bounds, we tend to wander. I then ask the team to walk me from start to finish so I can see all the steps between those 2 points. I walk the process numerous times until I clearly understand how the value flows. I then draw a process box for each major processing step where material moves and stops. Keep in mind these are major discrete steps where value doesn't flow. If you come across a cell where value is flowing, treat this as one box until a point you see a break in the flow. Next, draw a data box under each process box and include pertinent information about the step. I've listed some usual suspects you may want to capture. Remember, it's best if you capture the data on the shop floor personally rather than relying on someone to pull info from the system. For certain items that take a long time, like setup or CO for changeover, you may just want to get this from the system or ask an operator. So this is what the map looks like so far. Next, this symbol represents how much inventory was produced by a station. The symbol is used to show raw material, work in process, and finished goods of the value stream. Keep in mind that all the inventory produced by a particular workstation may not be still present at that specific site. So while some of Fold 1's inventory may still be in the work area, some of it may have been shifted to Fold number 2's area. It's important to properly account for inventory in the correct bucket. Next, we have 2 main ways to show how material flows through our value stream. One is a push symbol and the other is a pull symbol. In our case, we're running on a pure push system. I include the system with the inventory triangles I previously made. This is a classic model and you often see a production control box. Draw the production control box in the top center of the page. This box represents the production control and the scheduling department, so you may want to note all the systems that are being used. Next, we want to show how raw materials are flowing through your system and how finished goods are being transported out. This truck symbol is used to indicate the mode of transportation for shipping and receiving goods. Other symbols include boat, plane, and train. The frequency at which items are transported is generally noted inside of the symbol. A value stream map would not be complete without showing how information flows. In fact, this is what makes a value stream map unique from other mapping techniques. The straight arrow is used to show how information flows. This information can include frequency, forecasts, or schedules. The lightning bolt arrow is used to show the electronic flow of information. This information can also include frequency, forecasts, and schedules. But this is generally information that flows via computer. Now, this is a timeline that goes across the bottom of the map. The high points represent the lead time, in this case in days, of each inventory symbol that is captured on the timeline. Lead time equals inventory divided by the customer demand. So, for example, if there are 200 pieces of WIP with one fold and the final customer wants 20 planes per day, then the top line at the end of fold station 1 would be 200 divided by 20, which equals 10 days. The lower points on the timeline represent the value-added time of each processing step. Now, in our model, cycle time at each station is all value-added time. In the real world, only a portion of your cycle time will be value-added. Now, there's one final conceptual point I want to drive home. If you are producing in batches, do not put the time it takes to process the entire batch as value-added time. Only put down the time it takes to process the first piece in the batch as value-added time. Remember, the customer only wants one piece at any given time. They order in batches because of your inefficiencies. So only the first piece of any batch is value added. The rest of the batch is just along for the ride. Okay, so now you want to sum up the lead times versus the total value added times. Some companies express this as a ratio of time. So again, if you consider the entire batch as value added, you would naturally attempt to increase the ratio of the value added time to the total lead time by increasing your batch size. This is absolutely incorrect and would move us in the opposite direction we want to move as a lean producer. So, in our final map, you can see that it takes an item 88 days to flow from the customer to the supplier, and it only has 70 seconds of value added time. You may be surprised to find your organization's performance is very similar to the model shown here. In closing, keep in mind that this is a very basic model. Your value stream map can be very complex and have multiple paths. If you do have multiple paths, use the longest path for the timeline below. You can then illustrate how the other paths feed into this line. So here's our VSM example. Now, I'll give you fair warning, there are 17 iterations, so this section is kind of long. The CEO of Simplex Ski Company read a book on value stream mapping and decided to bring me in to help them map their value streams and to create true change in their organization. He takes me for a tour of the shop floor, and this is what I see on day one. Now, I'm just as confused as you are. All I see is a giant mess. The entire shop floor is organized in process villages. In other words, all like functions are grouped into large areas like the cutting area, the tracing area, and the painting area. Notice all the WIP that litters the shop floor. So I convinced the CEO to let me attack one value stream with no distractions or no scope creep. He agrees on the condition that I attack the value stream for the red skis. So as always, I start by scoping my balance. In this case, it's the raw materials area and the shipping area that make up my balance. Now, I walk the process and make sure I have a good feel for how the red skis are made. The CEO has done a good job in assembling a team from each functional area to work with me on the value stream. We start in the raw material areas and walk over to the coating. This is where raw materials are coated with a primer material. Batches of coated material are then sent over to the tracing area. Operators trace out the shapes of the skis on these massive sheets. The trace sheets are sent over to the cutting area where we observe an operator cutting sheets in small batches. The cut skis are sent over to a painting area where a large paint booth gives the skis a nice shiny coat of paint. We walk over to the next station, which is stenciling, and here a couple of operators are proudly stenciling on the Simplex logo on the skis. The final step of the operation involves installing the binding units on the skis. Once this is done, the skis are packaged and sent off to the shipping department to be sent to the customer. Now that I have a good understanding of the process, I'm ready to go back and get some inventory data. So in raw materials, I count 6 red drums of coating. Each red drum can coat 1,400 sets of skis. I asked the CEO how many sets of skis the customer demands on any given day. The answer is 140. Now, even though I'm full-blooded Irish, for some reason I'm pretty good at actually doing some quick math in my head. So 6 barrels times 1,400 sets per barrel gives me 8,400 total units I could paint. I divide 8,400 by the daily demand of 140 and see that they're holding 60 days or 2 months worth of inventory worth of red coating. I do the same thing for the massive fiberglass sheets in the raw material area. There are 5 sheets and each sheet can produce 1,400 sets of skis. So 1,400 times 5 equals 7,000 sets of skis. I divide 7,000 by the customer demand of 140 per day, and that's 50 days worth of inventory of raw material fiberglass. I walk to the coating area and notice there are neat stacks of 100 sets of skis that have been coated.
count 19 of these stacks. So that's 1900 sets worth of ski material. I ignore the material designated for the yellow skis because this is not within our value stream. So again, 1900 sets of skis. I also notice there are 4 that are in process on the work tables of the operators. I add this to my total. So I divide 1904 by 140, and that tells me there's 13.6 days worth of WIP in this area. I go over to the tracing area, and again, I count the stacks of 100. There are 15 stacks of 100 and 8 in process on the table. So that's 1,508 sets. Before I move on, the material handler comes by and takes a stack away. I ask him if there are more stacks of traced skis. He points over to the cutting area, and there's another holding area for traced skis that are going to be cut. This doesn't surprise me because the plant is running on a push system, so inventory is scattered. I go over and count 10 more stacks of skis that belong to the tracing area. As a quick side note, empty triangles on the floor represent WIP that has not been touched yet by the current station. This means this WIP belongs to the previous station and was merely pushed to the next workstation. If the triangles are filled, it means that the WIP has been completed by the current station and belongs to that operation. Obviously, items being manipulated on the table also belong to the current station. So we have to go back and erase the original number of 1508 because I found more WIP at the next station. Now do you see why we do this in pencil? So 1508 plus 1000 gives me a grand total of 2508. Again, I divide this by 140, and that gives me 17.9 days. So I'm still at the cutting station, and the operator just finished a batch of 6. I add that number to the 16 stacks of 100 I see. So that's 1606, and this time I take the initiative to walk over to the next station to investigate if there's more cutting WIP there. My suspicions are correct, and there are 7 additional stacks. So my grand total is actually 2306, which is 16.5 days worth of cutting WIP. At this particular moment, there are no red skis in the painting station. But I go to the next station and find that the red painting WIP had been pushed to the stenciling station. I counted 14 stacks, or 10 days worth of painting WIP. I walk over to bonding, and there are no red units. I begin to notice a pattern here. Each workstation tries to finish up their work and pass it on to the next station as quickly as possible. This is in an effort to clear their own area and to improve their own work area metrics. So I walk over to the shipping area just to see how many parts binding has pushed on out of their work area. There are 2,400 units, or 17.1 days worth of binding inventory. In this case, it's all finished product. The team and I walk the process several more times to collect information about cycle time, changeover, batch sizes, station uptime percentages, and quality percentages. I also confirm that the production controller puts out daily work orders to each station via daily schedules. Now, this is what the resulting map looks like. Notice that it takes over 135 days for a red ski to flow from beginning to end in the current state. But the value added time is only 33 minutes. Notice also that the raw materials are delivered weekly or bi-weekly, which forces Simplex skis to use valuable floor space. And finished product are shipped out weekly. Again, production scheduling controls what ships and what is produced at each workstation daily. But a lot of times the information is incorrect, and a lot of firefighting has to take place to get the shipment and production information corrected. Now, the CEO is very excited to see his first real value stream map. He envisions cells dedicated to each of his 3 unique product families. He challenges us to create an ideal state map that would support this model. He realizes that given the constraints and the layout of the facility today, this isn't achievable within the foreseeable future. The CEO is also very disappointed that it takes 135 days to convert raw materials into red skis. So he asks us to show him what it would take to make red skis in just 1 day. This is initially met with some raised eyebrows, but we take it on as a challenge, and I lead an effort to come up with an ideal state map. The ideal state map includes daily delivery of raw materials, a 3-person cell, and production that is controlled by pull from the customer via sequence Kanban through electronic feeds. Skis would be delivered daily to the customer rather than weekly. So armed with this ideal state map, we're ready to create a future state map. This is what we envision our system to look like 90 days from now. Now, the map does not appear to have changed much. But if you look closely, the team is proposing some significant changes in the form of quality and uptime improvements. So, this is the view of the data from the data boxes, and these highlighted cells are the metrics that the team are trying to improve to reach the future state. The team clearly indicates the areas they are trying to improve directly on the map. This is communicated to everyone on the shop floor by using Kaizen bursts with areas we are trying to improve. This is a view of the 90-day action plan that was driven from the Kaizen bursts. So let's fast forward 90 days, and this is what the shop floor looks like again. It physically hasn't changed much, but the team is excited by our improvements. I go through the same exercise with the team. We walk the process, count the inventory, and validate improvements in quality and uptime. The team met or exceeded each of their goals from 90 days ago. They take time to celebrate their accomplishments with the entire plant. We next decide to attack stenciling and painting. Painting has a long changeover time, and we realize in order to achieve our goal of a one-piece flow cell, changeover time and batch size must be reduced. There's also a significant amount of scrap that is generated from only having a quality percentage of 94%. The cycle time in stenciling could use some work too. Some Kaizen with the shop floor employees may reveal that we can reduce this 20-minute cycle time in half. The next 90-day action plan is generated and the team is off again. 90 days later, the team achieves its goals and it celebrates. So in this iteration, the team decides to tackle the cutting and the painting area's uptime. I'm using the term uptime to represent the percentage of time a machine is up and available for usage. If you see 100% uptime, it doesn't mean that the machine is being used 24 hours a day. It means the machine is functional and ready for use anytime it's needed.
Don't confuse this with percentage utilization, which is the percentage of the time the machine is actually in use.
So the team focuses on the uptime of their cutting and painting stations. We achieve the goals of 100 and 90% of uptime in the cutting and painting stations respectively. At this stage, the team has made the environment stable enough to begin laying down the groundwork to start building towards attacked time. There are 8 hours in a shift and 60 minutes in an hour. We subtract 60 minutes for lunches and breaks and daily machine maintenance, and we have a total of 420 minutes to produce per day. Divide 420 minutes by the 140 daily demand, and you get a 3-minute tack time. Now, with each iteration, the CEO wisely tells us to continue to refer to the ideal state map. He always makes sure that the team is focused on the final state they are attempting to build. The team keeps this in mind and realizes that in order to reach the ideal state map of a dedicated cell, they need to start focusing on shifting workers to balance cycle times to meet this 3-minute tack time. The state-of-the-art painting booth is a challenge because it's designed for large batches and the accounting department wants a quick ROI. So the work continues, and by the 5th iteration, the team is able to begin dedicating small areas solely to red skis. Only the large paint booth still services all product families and remains a shared resource. In order to create a stenciling area dedicated to red skis, we needed to shift 2 operators from the now overmanned tracing area. 2 operators in the value stream mapping or VSM team agreed to move over to the red ski stenciling area. Take a moment to notice how the shop floor is starting to change. On the 6th iteration, the team continues to work on the cycle times of each station to meet the 3-minute tack time. By the 7th iteration, the team gets to the point where they've driven down cycle time per operator and feel confident by the next iteration they can work towards single operator stations. By the 8th round, the floor begins to take shape. Notice how much less clutter there is on a shop floor. Each station, except paint, now has a single dedicated worker. In this iteration, the team is also working toward establishing a pull system. Notice the supermarkets that were put in place right after the cutting and the painting areas. The team takes a look at the ideal state map and realizes in order to create a cell with flow, they must first master pull. By iteration 9, the team has grown frustrated with the paint booth dilemma. Painting takes seconds, and they've done as much Kaizen as they can do to reduce the setup times. We successfully reduced the paint booth setup times from 30 to 20 minutes. But the high-tech nature of the machine makes physical modifications prohibitive. One of the operators on the team suggests that we dust off the old manual paint stations that are sitting in the warehouse collecting dust. These were retired 2 years ago after the VP of Ops saw this new paint station at an expo in Atlanta. With a little cleanup of the manual station, they could be installed and ready for use. The CEO catches wind of this and confronts the team. He obviously wants us to make the best use of our high-tech investment. The team shows him the ideal state map and reminds him that the high-tech paint booth doesn't fit the model. The CEO reluctantly agrees. The team has proven to itself and the rest of the shop floor that the pull system they installed works great. And with this new/old manual dedicated paint booth, the team is ready to actually segregate the area and began working in a production line. Prior to this, we had dedicated stations that were still in a process village format. Moving stations close together to create pull and then eventually flow is in line with our ideal state map. Now, finally notice that the team has demonstrated their improvements and feel confident to the point of increasing their shipment frequencies. They negotiate a deal with a customer who is more than willing to pay a premium for the daily deliveries. The customer is delighted because it's a win-win for both parties. He's happy because he doesn't need to dedicate valuable floor space to store a week's worth of skis. They take this money and apply it to the additional shipping costs associated with the more frequent deliveries of raw material fiberglass. Now, the Simplex Ski Company is shipping and receiving more frequently. By the next iteration, with growing confidence in the more frequent deliveries, production, uptime, and quality, the team feels it can decrease inventory across the system. Notice the radical change to the shop floor and the proximity of the stations to each other. In this next iteration, the team and the shop floor are now comfortable with using withdrawal and production Kanban. Now, because of the proximity of the stations, one of the team members asked if we can do away with cards between stations and create FIFO lanes, or first in, first out lanes. He argues that all the stations are stable enough to begin producing to a very small FIFO lane. This makes the team a bit nervous because this would eventually call for the significant decrease in WIP, which has kept the system running smoothly. But the team decides to take the training wheels off. The math proves out, and in the spirit of Kaizen and the ideal state map, the team decides to give it a shot, and all the stations except cutting and painting, which are still a bit unstable, are moved to a FIFO system. Cutting and painting will send their Kanban back to the beginning of the line where we're trying to establish flow. By value stream 12, the team decides to go with FIFO pull only. The only supermarket pull would be from the shipping department. Units shipped will trigger a Kanban to go back to the beginning of the production line and start production. By value stream 13, the team proves out the improvements and want to decrease inventory in the FIFO lane to none and begin exploring the dedicated U-shaped cell seen in the ideal state map. This is presented to the CEO and he's very excited to see the concept prove out. The shop floor once again is rearranged and a cell is established. It's manned with the same 6 people and they're very comfortable now working side by side. Kanban flow out of the cell to request raw materials and flow into the cell to trigger production. The system runs very smoothly. Now, by value stream 14, the CEO is very excited by the improvements we made. He wants us to stop and move on to replicate this on the other product families. The same paint booth operator objects. He explains that there's still opportunity to drive to the 3-man cell and that abandoning the vision now would hurt morale. The CEO gives a thumbs up to continue. By value stream 15, the math proves out and they can decrease their 6-man operation to 3. The team drives down the cycle times of each of the work areas so 3 operators can now absorb the work previously done by 6. By value stream 16, they want to take on the challenge to rebalance the work. They decrease the cycle times of the stations within the cell and drive toward a 3-man operation. Now, rebalancing takes some time to get used to because operators are not used to running other pieces of machinery. A 3-man cell means that operators have to run multiple stations. The operators adapt pretty quickly because Simplex Ski Company has well-documented standard work. So by value stream 17, the 3-man cell is proven out and the team is ready to implement this across other product families. The team finds that an L-shaped cell works best for the blue and green product family and a linear cell works best for the yellow product family. The cells are working well and the last step is to get production control involved in this new mixed model system. So instead of sending a shipping list every day to the shipping department, production control now uses Kanban to control the pace and pulling of what is produced. This is done through a Hajunka board which is located just outside the production manager's office. As part of the standard loop, the material handler pulls a card off the board and sends it into the system while he pulls finished product. This triggers the entire system to react in a controlled manner. So it was late on a Wednesday afternoon when we finally put in the finishing touches of our new system. It took roughly 4 years to take Simplex Ski Company from a classic mass producer to becoming a lean producer. The CEO congratulates me and lets me know he appreciates my effort. We flip through all of the old future and current state maps and we look back at the rev dates. We reminisce about the frustration and the occasional blow-ups he and the rest of the team had. I ask him where his company goes from here and he replies that he's got a new ideal state in mind for taking one of the product families and making it into an online custom ski provider with same-day ship time. This brings a smile to my face knowing that the process of Kaizen will continue at Simplex Ski Company. As he slowly shuffles through the old value stream maps, he asks me what's next for me. I tell him a couple partners and I are going to make a website dedicated to teaching lean through free video lessons. He's not listening. Sun Tzu's Art of War is one of my favorite books. One of his quotes is, "Strategy without tactics is the longest road to victory. Tactics without strategy is a noise before defeat." Take a moment to reflect on your organization. Are your improvement efforts purely tactical with no big picture or strategy in mind? Many organizations are excellent in the tactical aspects of lean, but never bother to create a big picture that they're building toward. They're doing nothing but making noise before their inevitable defeat. In the beginning of the lesson, I told you how my grandma was good at putting together jigsaw puzzles, while I wasn't. It was because she was more focused on the overall outcome, literally the big picture, and I was focusing on the individual pieces. Is your organization making the same mistake I did, missing the big picture of lean because it's focusing too much on individual pieces? I've seen many shop floors that are immaculate with everything labeled. Now, the discipline it takes to achieve this is very impressive, but if that labeled immaculate shop floor doesn't lead to achieving your overall goals, the big picture, then so what? In fact, if any tool, even value stream mapping itself, doesn't help you achieve the big picture, then so what? Oftentimes, companies start trying to put together the big puzzle without looking at the picture on the box. They become so fixated on the pieces that they miss out on their true business objectives. Remember, your organization is in business to make money, not to make Gantt charts, not to run 5S, or to learn the latest wave of Japanese improvement terminology. Lean thinking is merely a business philosophy that serves as a vehicle for you to make more money faster. Apply your lean thinking towards a clear goal and don't trip over the pieces that get you there. So here's a quick summary of what we learned. We defined what a value stream was. We showed you an easy way to identify your value streams. We showed you the basics of value stream mapping. And then we took a current state all the way to an ideal state map.